All right, 1/4 of 2023 is in the books. So real estate wise, we're going to talk about the biggest thing driving the market right now. Talk about what that means for the buyers, what that means for the sellers, and what we think is going to happen next. Here's your snapshot of where we are right now, spring 2023. Steve with the Malone home team at EXP here in the Atlanta area. All right, so the April 10th we're recording this. So we're about a third of the way through April. So let's call this is kind of the quarter-way point, right in the middle of spring. Spring has sprung, pollen's going, azalea's going. Masters just finished up yesterday. So the spring buying season is upon us. And the craziness typically lasts through spring until the middle part of summer. Now last year that changed because of interest rates, things like that. And interest rates are really the thing that has been driving the real estate market over the last couple of months because the interest rates have been kind of up and down a little bit. That being said, though, there is a trend with the interest rate. So today we're going to talk about exactly where we are right now and what it means for all those different groups. All right, so we're going to talk about the interest rates. We're talking about what it means for buyers because buyers are back. What it means for sellers because the sellers are slowly coming back, and what it means as we head towards the end of the year because I think the end of this year is going to look a lot different than the end of last year. Okay, so let's talk about it. We're going to break it all down, try and keep it moving as quickly as possible. First quarter of 2023 in the books, your spring outlook. Here we go. All right, so interest rates have driven the housing market over the last several months. It was back in the summer of last year where the interest rates went past 6%. Remember, at the beginning of last year, beginning of 2022, the interest rates are actually down in the threes. Believe it or not, they quickly raced all the way up into the sixes by summertime. Once they hit the sixes, that put an end to the real estate market, and them hitting the sevens really just kind of threw a brick wall in front of the whole thing. Things were very quiet last fall. We were waiting for something to happen to now get everything back on track. Interest rates have steadily come down beginning part of the year. People were coming back, and all of a sudden they started to kind of bounce back towards 7%. A lot of economic data still going back and forth, unemployment data, data about inflation, things like that. We're watching it all the time. The trend is to see the interest rates go down, but there's been a big wobble probably about a month ago or so. Since then, the trend has been for those interest rates to slowly come down. Now, two things have happened with the interest rates. The trend is for them to go down and will likely continue to go down as we head into summertime. Okay, that's bringing some of the buyers back. The other thing that's happening right now is that the interest rates are a lot higher than they were. The interest rates were at 3% at the beginning of last year. And a lot of buyers, once it said 6% in the summertime, they flipped and they left and they were done. The reality was, as we kept saying, there had to be something that was going to bring an end to that pandemic market, and the pandemic market's over. Okay, we're back to regular real estate now. That being said, though, buyers weren't going to jump back in until it looked like the interest rates were going to get better. They're going to get better. They're going to get better. It's been 9-10 months now. Interest rates are still above 6%. So I think buyers now are saying, look, interest rates are at 6%. They may come down a little bit. They're not going back to 3 or 2 for a while, if ever, not unless something catastrophic happens with the economy or the country. So more than likely, 6s to 5s might be the best we get. If we want to buy, let's go ahead and buy. And the home prices have relaxed a little bit. In some parts of the country, the home prices have actually cratered. We've seen home prices go down 10-15%. Here in Atlanta, I'd argue that the home prices kind of went flat. Some areas you could say they went down. Some areas you could say they steadily went up a little bit. I think for the whole, we're going to say they went flat for several months. There just hasn't been enough inventory to support them going down. But now the home prices are starting to go up again. Interest rates are, it's not shocking anymore. So people are saying, let's jump back in. That's why a lot of the buyers are back now. They're not back like they were last spring where things are super crazy. All right, everything had like 500 offers on it. But the buyers are back. Multiple offers are back. Offers above asking are back. The market is back. Okay, and that's because of the interest rates. As we look forward with the interest rates, there is the trend as inflation starts to relax a little bit. Looks like the employment data is starting to flatten out a little bit because, again, low unemployment is great for people who want to work. We want there to be low unemployment. The unemployment, though, number is very low. there's a lot of people at work, and it's indicative of a strong economy. A strong economy is a kind of economy that lends itself to higher interest rates. Okay, if we have more people, or the unemployment rate go up, let's say, back to around 5%. 5% is kind of like the number that would be a healthy number, let's say. It would keep inflation in check. Interest rates actually come down a little bit if you had higher unemployment. It kind of sounds weird that kind of bad financial news is better for rates, but that's one of my coaches says that all the time. Bad financial news is great for interest rates because interest rates are there to help stimulate the economy, stimulate things going on that need to be stimulated. If things are going great, you don't need anything stimulated. You need to slow things down, kind of keep things in check. That's why when the economy is booming, interest rates are super high. The economy starts slowing down, your interest rates are going to start coming down again. So that's what we're seeing right now. The trend of inflation coming down a little bit. The unemployment starting to kind of normalize a little bit. Some of those things are lending themselves to seeing interest rates getting into the fives later this year, maybe even the low fives by the end of the year. Okay, that's going to play into what we think is going to happen next. But interest rates, that's a snapshot of what's going on right now, and that has a lot to do with what's going on with the buyers. So, first part, interest rates. Second part, let's talk about the buyers in this market. So the buyers are back. Again, not the levels that we saw in spring of 2022, but they are back. Showings per home is up as high as it's been since August or September of last year. So that means that the foot traffic into those homes is coming back. We're seeing multiple offer situations. We're seeing situations where if the house looks the part, great area, priced right, you're getting offers above asking. Now, last year we were seeing offers $100,000, $150,000 over asking. Now what we're seeing now, we're seeing like $5,000, $10,000 over asking, which is, that's kind of more indicative of a normal market. Okay. Now, the issue that we're having with the buyers is not a lot of inventory. Okay. Inventory, we'll talk more about that with the sellers in just a second, but inventory, if you're a buyer, you're going in, there's only 1.9 months of inventory here in the Atlanta area. Okay. What does that mean? We say it all the time. Give it to you again. Months of inventory. If we added no more houses to the market, okay, if we went with the houses that we have right now, at the pace that we're selling, with the number of homes that we have right now, how long would it take to get rid of all the houses? Okay, that's the months of inventory we have. 5 to 7 is kind of neutral. Something that's 3 to 5 is a seller's market. Under 3 is a strong seller's market. We're at 1.9. We're in like a very strong seller's market right now. So if you're a buyer, yeah, there's not as many buyers as there were last year. Yeah, the interest rates are higher. But it's not quite as crazy. You can still get a decent deal, but there's still not a lot of houses to choose from. So if you are buying in this market, what do you need to do? You need to be pre-qualified or pre-approved ahead of time. Okay, you've got to know what your buying power is. And that's an important question to ask your loan officer or have your realtor help you get with a loan officer. We have some awesome people that we work with. Get with your loan officer and figure out what your buying power is, okay? It could be higher than you think. It could be lower than you think based on if you're a 1099 employee, if you have your own business. You may not be able to afford the house that you think based on your tax returns and things like that. Again, we're going to get our people, take a look for you, figure out what your buying power is. And it also is going to allow us to put an offer in. We can't put an offer in on a house if we're not pre-qualified or pre-approved on the house, okay? We're going to say we'll get pre-approved later. Not really going to work. Okay, we got to be pre-approved and ready to rock and roll. The other thing is we got to get plugged in and see like what's out there. What are you looking for? We can make phone calls to homes that came off the market, aren't necessarily on the market right now, but if they're in the area that you want and they were on the market, they came off, there are things that we can do to try and help find those houses. And that's what we're trying to do right now to try and help our buyers. It's not as dire of a situation as it was last year. Last year was crazy. Last spring, like March and April was just nuts. It's not that right now. But for buyers, it's still, it can be a hard market to find a house in if you're looking for something very specific, okay? Things are improving a little bit with the number of listings coming on the market, but not fast enough to take care of all the buyers. So let's talk about that next. Buyers. But just to reiterate, the buyers have come back. They have kind of dealt with the shock of the interest rates. They have dealt with the fact that interest rates are going to be probably in the low 6s to upper 5s for a little bit, and maybe get in the low 5s by the end of the year. Buyers are dealing with that. They've, back in June, they didn't want to hear it. Now they're willing to hear it because you know what? It's 9 months later. This is our new reality. Let's rock and roll. Let's find a house. So now the buyers are coming back. It's springtime. The azaleas are out. That's what happens. It's it's like clockwork. The azaleas go out and all the buyers show up. That's what we're dealing with right now. Okay, buyers. Now let's talk about sellers. So coming out of March in the Metro Atlanta area, we added about 7,000 new listings to the market. Okay, what does that number mean with no context? That number is the highest number we've seen since September, August of last year. September of August last year, the market had already started to crash, started to come back down, and the sellers didn't know it yet. So sellers are still putting houses out there to list and to sell, and the buyers were gone, long gone. Even after we were telling everybody there's no buyers left, there are still sellers out there like, well, they still thought it was that April market. They still wanted to cash in on the April market, and the April market was gone. Okay, by August, September, the party was over. So people were still listing their house, hoping to still get in on the market. The market was gone. Then the sellers started to slow down. The listings started to slow down, things like that. That did two things. Number one, and probably most important for all of us who are homeowners, is that really held up the home values in Atlanta. A lot of other places in the country, there was a lot more homes on the market. Here in Atlanta, there weren't because people just stopped listing because they weren't going to sell their home. Because of that, the supply-demand curve didn't go crazy. It didn't go crazy in the other direction. If there's no supply, it doesn't matter what the demand is, you're not going to have a big drop in prices. Back in 08, 09, when we had the big crash, you had a whole bunch of houses. You're talking about 10, 11, 12 months of inventory here in the Metro Atlanta area, and there were no buyers. All right, that's the recipe to get a major wholesale drop in prices. That's not what we had last year. Okay, what we had was the buyers left, and the sellers said, well, I ain't selling then. There were no homes on the market, no buyers to buy them. Market just went quiet, okay, which leads to a flat line on prices at worst, which is what we probably saw. Maybe a slight drop in certain areas, slight uptick in certain areas, but I think on average we just kind of went flat. I know people said to me, well, my Zestimate said this, my Zestimate said that. The Zestimate trying to base it on, what did people get in April? If you're selling a $450,000 house in April and it's worth $450,000 and somebody paid $550,000 for it, the question becomes, are the houses now worth $550,000 or are the houses worth $450,000 and somebody just overpaid for it? And I think a lot of people were looking at the fact that you get one house that sold for $550,000, all of a sudden the whole neighborhood's $550,000. And I don't think that's what happened. And again, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, if you look at it that way, then the house prices now are like $475,000 in that same neighborhood. Like, well, the houses came down like $75,000. It's like, maybe they went up $25,000. And that was just a one-off that happened because of that crazy market. It's hard to say. It's hard to put that out there like and say and quantify, what was the right number. But that's what some of those estimates and everything are based on, is some of those crazy numbers that we're selling. But all indications of that, we're through that. The market's starting to tick up now as far as prices of homes. So what we're seeing now, and we just talked about, more listings this month than we've seen since September, August. The sellers are saying, okay, let's jump back in because the buyers are there. It's time to rock and roll. The thing we're seeing now is because there's a whole bunch of buyers, now the listings are coming back, they're getting eaten up almost immediately. So February, we're at 1.9 months of inventory. March, 1.9 months of inventory. The actual number of available homes is kind of staying flat because the ones that get added get taken almost immediately by the buyers that are looking. Okay, so we need even more to try and get that number up. You can get, months of inventory somewhere in the 2 to 3 range. Yeah, it's a seller's market, but it's a little more, tolerable. People have more stuff to choose from. Then more buyers come out, then more sellers come out, and then the market really starts humming. It could be what we end up seeing later on this year. Again, we'll talk about that in just a second. But as far as sellers go, you're in a great position right now because the buying demand outpaces the supply, which has been what we've seen. Even before the pandemic, that was where we were. It wasn't as crazy as it was during the pandemic. The pandemic was just like crazy. But now you're seeing a situation, where the demand outpaces the supply. So what does that mean? If you're selling, depending on your area, depending on your price point, but in certain areas, certain price points, the house looks the part, is priced right, marketed right, you're going to get sold, potentially over asking price, potentially with multiple offers, again, depending on the area, but this is not like it was in August and September. In August, September, you had to really bring your prices down considerably to match where the market was. The market's turned, we're back on the upswing, so if you're selling, you're back in the driver's seat. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you were looking to sell, this next month is a really good opportunity before all the sellers come back. Okay, and we have a much more balanced market later on this year. But that being said, I think it's going to still be a good market later on this year. Okay, so we'll break into that. So to round this part of it out, talking about sellers. Sellers, you're in a great spot. Get your house ready to rock and roll. We've got plenty of videos on that, and that's something we talk to our people about all the time. Let us help you get your house ready to sell. April is going to be a really great time to list your home, get it sold before summer really hits, and set yourself up to get a good deal on your house. Selling, you had a rough couple months there. You're back in the driver's seat again of the deals. So keep that in mind. All right, now, what's going to happen next? All right, here's my thought on what's going to happen next. My thought on what's going to happen next is spring is going to be pretty solid. It's not going to be as solid as it was last year, obviously, as far as volume goes, as far as the number of buyers per listing, things like that. Last spring was just nuts. But there's going to be a decent number of buyers out there. There's going to be a decent number of homes out there. If you're selling, I think you're going to be in a good position. I think we're going to get the typical summer lull we get early to mid-July. It's going to last through Labor Day. Last year, when we got that lull that crashed the market, the lull hit earlier, it hit in mid-June, and the market just completely went silent for about 6 months, maybe 7 months. Maybe it was middle of January before things really started to get a heartbeat again and come back online. So from what it looks like right now, I think we get that normal lull in the summertime. And I think that once we get past Labor Day, I think the fall of this year is going to be a good fall for real estate. And it's going to be driven by interest rates. The interest rates right now are in the low sixes. But what everybody keeps talking about is we're going to get into May. There are some big economic data points that get released in May. May could be the beginning of the interest rates really taking that turn into the fives. It seems like they keep hitting 6 and they keep bouncing off the floor and keep bouncing off the floor. They keep wanting to drive through the 6, they keep bouncing off the floor. I think once we get to those big economic data points in May, I think that's going to finally drive the interest rates into the fives. And that's going to allow for the interest rates to fall into the low fives by the end of the year. That's what a lot of the people are looking at right now. Again, I'm not a lender. I don't have the letters behind my name. So talk to a lender to get an official diagnosis of what's going to happen. This is me just shooting from the hip. What do I think? Based on what I've read and heard, we're going to be in the low fives by the end of the year. That's going to keep buyers engaged. It's going to keep them energized. I think sellers are coming back because they're seeing, all right, the market's not as crazy as it was, but we're still getting better deals for our houses. So the buyers are going to come back. I don't know if you ever get in a position where, I don't want to say you ever get, I just don't know when it's going to happen, when you're going to be in a position where it's going to be a buyer's market. We had so many years after the 08-09 recession where we just didn't build enough houses. Even with all the construction that you see right now, everywhere, that's the kind of construction that we need to do every year. We still haven't made up for the fact that there were several years, 5-6 years, where we were way behind in construction. We've never caught up. And when it looked like we might be turning the corner and catching up, COVID happened. And that slowed it down again. It's a long way away before we actually catch up to where we're supposed to be housing-wise here in the Atlanta area. Okay, so that being said, I think it's going to be a seller's market for a while. Not a crazy seller's market like it was, but a seller's market for a while. Okay, sellers are going to be able to get a good deal, But the buyers are going to stay engaged, I think, later on this year because of the interest rates. I think we're going to have a very surprisingly strong fall. So if you decide, I want to sell in the spring, but I'm not ready, when's a good time? Mid-July to early August. I mean, I'll tell my people, if you want to sell, if you need to sell, we're going to get your house sold, okay? But if you want to sell to maximize what you can get, maybe it makes sense to wait till after Labor Day. On average, we have a very surprisingly good fall housing season, okay? Because the buyers, there aren't as many of them, but they're very motivated. They want to be moved by the end of the year. And sellers, well, there aren't as many of them, they're very motivated too because they got to sell their house, okay? So I think the fall housing market's going to be pretty strong. So I think spring does well. We have a normal lull, and then fall picks back up, especially with interest rates getting back down, in the low fives by the end of the year potentially. Then you get your Christmas lull like we normally see. And then next year, when you talk about going into spring and next year with interest rates, again, low fives, could you be in the upper fours? I don't know. I think low fives will probably be enough to really re-energize the whole thing. And then you're back to a really strong market next year. I think we're strong this spring, but I think we might be even stronger next year, a lot more volume next year. That's kind of what it looks like right now. So if you're buying, I say grab the house now. If you're waiting a year, what you're waiting for is you're waiting for interest rates to come down, so it's going to be cheaper for you to buy, right? In the next year, home prices are going to go up. And in the next year, the number of buyers that you're going to be competing with will probably go up too because the interest rates are coming down. So it probably makes more sense for you to buy now and refi next year. Buy the house cheaper now, refi next year versus wait a year, buy a more expensive house and have to likely overpay for it because of all the people jumping in and all the multiple offers and things like that. That's probably next year. Right now, much better opportunity for you to buy, okay? Selling wise, I think you're in a really good spot right now. I think you're going to be in a good spot in the fall. I think you're going to be a good spot in spring, okay? So if your sellers, the time to avoid is probably that summer lull and that winter lull right near Christmas. If you're buying and you really want to get a really good deal, yeah, mid-July to mid-August, that's the time to go out and get a great deal. That's what it looks like right now. All right, so there's your spring update. Okay, we talked about interest rates. They're coming down. Buyers are over it. Buyers are used to it. Buyers are jumping back in. Talk about the number of buyers. Again, the volume's way up from where it was over the fall. Sellers are starting to pick up. Sellers are getting better deals now. And what we look at going forward, I think things are going to start picking up. And later this year and into next year, I think that next spring is going to be a lot busier than this spring is. And this spring is actually going to be surprisingly busy. Fall is going to be surprisingly busy. And then next spring is going to be kind of back to a little bit more of a very busy spring. That's what it looks like to me. What does it all mean for you, though? Because at the end of the day, we could say it's a great time to buy a house, but it may not make sense for you right now. Let's come up with a game plan. If we need to talk to a lender about getting you a plan for this is where my credit score is now, how do I get my credit score up? If you need to talk to a lender about this is how much money I have now, where do I need to be to put money down? If whatever we need to talk about, if you need to come up with a game plan in 6 months, I want to hit the ground running, we need to talk now. Same thing with selling. In 6 months, if you want to sell, let's talk now. Let's get your house ready now. So that way in 6 months, when it hits the market, it's going to be beautiful. When we get it sold. Steve. Malone Home Team, eXp Atlanta. We'll talk to you. Bye. Hey, thanks for watching the video today. If you want more information on what's going on in the real estate market, take a look at some of these videos over here that we've posted, keeping up with what buying, selling, things that are going on in the North Georgia market. But if you want to keep up with everything that we post to our YouTube channel, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel down there, bottom right. That way you won't miss out on anything.